Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks, sponsored by University of Iowa Healthcare.
I'm standing here just thinking about one of the plays early in practice. We were down in the red zone and we missed I think it was Weedshed, was open out there on the right side. And the throw was off by about 2 feet, something like that. And that to me was like kind of where we're at right now. In the fall, we got to make that play. The play's there, you got to make it.
Well, come the fall, somebody else might get the opportunity to make that play if things unfold the way we saw it in 2023. Welcome to Eye on the Hawks. It's been a minute, folks. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell, here to break down spring and a little bit of everything across Hawkeye football after the spring scrimmage on Saturday and wrapping up the first 15 practices of the Tim Lester era with the new offense there. Of course, you got our Twitter tags and names there to follow us on social media. Eye on the Hawks, all the other stuff on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel as well if you want to watch this stream live. If you're not listening to it, just the audio version. We got a lot to get to. We're going to talk about what we saw Saturday at Kinnick Stadium. We're going to talk about what may need to happen now coming out. We're going to talk about who stood out, maybe some surprises, even if they're not on the roster anymore. But to give you an idea of just how tuned in Mike is to just being a good newsman, he sent out an early rundown for this yesterday and started with transfer news. Because the way we're wired when it comes to newscasts, you want to lead with your newest stuff first. That's just kind of a inverted pyramid down. Here's your big story, here's the main stuff, here's the first stuff, and then you work your way down. I said, well, why don't we go more chronological? Let's start with, hey, here's what happened at Kinnick Stadium, who was out there, who wasn't. We'll get into the injuries as well. And then we'll get into the transfer portal and, well, who could leave? What does Iowa need? And then at 9 o'clock this morning, Deacon Hill says he's in the portal.
I knew it.
And we flip it.
Had you called that?
No, I didn't.
So, Deacon Hill, 9 starts last year, 16 months on campus after transferring in from Wisconsin. Basically had one foot at Fordham until his old buddy John Budmeyer called up and said, hey, maybe an opportunity here as well. We assume that's what happened since Bud had offered him back, I believe, sophomore year in high school. Initial thoughts, reactions, farewells to number 10.
Well, I said it in my repost of his X post that he put out there that I was like, great kid that we all really loved. I mean, I feel like everybody who got a chance to get to know Deacon Hill really liked the guy and was truly rooting for him. We really wanted to see him do well, but I think for me, by the end of the season, especially by the Tennessee game, I was like, this guy just does not, from what I've seen, have what it takes to make it here at the University of Iowa, at least. I really hope he could do something at a Division I school, maybe a Power 5 school somewhere, but it just seemed like things just were not unfolding the way that we had all hoped for him at the University of Iowa. So I think it was maybe a good opportunity to maybe look for something else.
Yeah, I have similar feelings with you, Owen. You guys talked to him more than I did, but from every interview that I watched and I was in during the games, post-game, seems like a nice kid, interesting kid. I don't know if I can call him a kid, but still, he's still pretty young.
Kids. But they're 18 to 22-year-olds.
But I just don't think he's a Power 5 quarterback. I'd be surprised if someone gave him a Power 5 offer. Yeah. I think what Tim Lester said last week it seems like he's developing, and I think a little bit. He still said, one key thing that Tim said last Thursday when you guys talked to him was when it comes to Deacon, when he's off balance, the ball, there's no accuracy. And he was starting to kind of get those fundamentals. So I kind of wonder, with the right coach, if he can improve to do like an FCS level. I'm sure he's got a cannon, so he's going to go somewhere. But best of luck to him, though, in his future. But I think this is the best thing for Iowa football is to, if he would have had to play next year, the whole situation would have been bad, I think, unless he shocked the world and got, completely 100% better from, in the next 6 months, which we didn't see on Saturday. He improved a little bit, but I think he needs to improve a lot if he wants to play in a Big Ten team.
Lester had talked about his footwork and how that had come a long way and that he'd really looked at it. So I went back and watched the fall scrimmage where Cade got hurt, and it first became very apparent, Deacon's going to need to be ready. And then we found out against Michigan State, you better really be ready. He did throw a lot off his back foot. Maybe would eventually follow through, but he was almost leaning back as he was loading, and you saw some of those floaters, like Lester said, there's no accuracy and it's just going to sail on you. It seemed better on Saturday, and again, we've only got to see our little slice of what we can with this team, but by all accounts, he had improved. But you guys have both mentioned it. Just talk about getting thrown in the fire, getting hit in the mouth, having every struggle, having fans just douse him in kerosene, and he just couldn't have been more affable. Always stood in the pocket, so to speak, and just was always nice. Gave you some great stories about his car and how the heck he got that from California to Iowa. And man, again, like it's set up like it could be such a cool thing of you get recruited to Wisconsin out of California. The guy who's been in your corner since sophomore year of high school gets a gig at Iowa. You've decided to transfer. You're about to go to an FCS school. He says, hey, like, we need a guy. Cade McNamara's, still coming back from the knee. I imagine it went down something like this of just, hey, it'd be nice to have somebody else here, and it can get you some reps and maybe elevate your potential at some point. You can help the room. And there were never any plans for him to start. And then he gets thrown in the fire, and it's a beat-up team. Offensive line guys playing hurt. Lachey's out. Eric All goes out. All these other injuries, and it's just an avalanche of worst-case scenarios, and the kid could not have handled himself better day in, day out. So
I really do hope that, in hindsight, I think that for Deacon Hill, it almost would have worked better if he had maybe stuck with his initial plan to go to Fordham, before he transferred out of Wisconsin, just because he had not, as the storylines always went, he hadn't played since, his junior year of high school, I think was the last time. He didn't really get a senior year because of COVID.
Yeah.
Spent 2 years at least on the Wisconsin roster and didn't get a snap.
And so in my estimation, I feel like it almost would have worked better to go to an FCS school and get your mojo back after missing so much time, get a chance to get some Division I level football experience before jumping up to a Power 5 school where it's like, boy, he just went from never starting since his junior year of high school to Big Ten games. And that was just a bit of too much of a jump, it seems like, for him to make in that period of time.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't think he was ready when he jumped in. And if Joey Labus was healthy early in the season, he probably goes in, right? I mean, he was the backup at the end of last season, but he suffered an injury. Joey never took a snap last year. I think at some point he knew his time was done at Iowa, and so he just didn't get another opportunity. But if he's healthy, I think he does. He's probably the number 2. But I do see this as a positive for both parties. I think he's going to get some wherever he goes. It's going to be a better experience. And I think it gives Iowa about a week to find a backup quarterback in the portal, because I do not think that as much as we have hope in Cade, that you can't trust him being 100%. And competition never hurt anyone.
Frankly, I'm not even rooting against that our friends down the road in Cedar Falls at the University of Northern Iowa might give Deacon Hill a shot. I mean, they're looking for a quarterback right now, and I'd frankly love to see him playing on the turf at the Unidome. So there's a lot of places at the FCS level that I think would be a good fit for Deacon.
What he does get to take with him, though, is a year at Iowa, and it sounds like everybody in that locker room loved him, and so maybe not the stats you'd want, but I think he had a life experience that he affected a lot of lives, and I think people enjoyed the time with him, certainly present company included as well. Well, the search now goes for who else can you add to this quarterback room. You've got James Razor coming in from Jacksonville, a freshman they're really hyped up about. He's 6'4", 200. I think he runs like a 10-700 or something like that. I mean, he's tall, he's long, he's fast. Just makes you wonder of what he could be in this offense. But he's probably QB4. And QB2 is either going to be Marco, who we've already heard there have been packages for, or a transfer quarterback. And I can't imagine them not bringing in a transfer quarterback. And 20 minutes after Deacon Hill announces he's in the portal, Brendan Sullivan of Davison, Michigan, formerly recruited to Western Michigan by Tim Lester before he decided to go to the Wildcats. Sullivan announces he's in the portal. 2 and 2 makes 4, really clearly on paper. Life isn't paper. He's got to be the front runner, I'd imagine.
The timing is, he's a Northwestern kid, right? That was going to start at Northwestern.
13 games at Northwestern, 8 starts, 257 career rushing yards. He can move, but he's not a run-first threat. 1,300 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 picks. kind
He
of
was recruited by Lester. I guess I hadn't seen that, but you did.
He
your
was
research.
offered by Northwestern was basically his best offer.
Yep.
I think Big Ten schools were Northwestern, Indiana, and then every MAC school because he's a Davidson, Michigan kid. So Ypsilanti's right there for Eastern, Mount Pleasant for Central's up there, and then everybody else down in Ohio and everywhere else.
And I was just going to quickly look up what he did against Iowa because he would have been the starter at Wrigley Field last year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
he started I think 2 games against Iowa.
Boy, him and Deacon really duked it out on the field last year. Deacon was 10 for 15, 65 yards and a touchdown. Brendan Sullivan, 12 of 19, 81 yards and 1 touchdown. Against the
If you're looking for numbers, go look at his game against Maryland last year. I think he had 350 all-purpose yards, a couple scores. He can make plays when he needs to, and by all accounts, was a good guy in that Wildcat locker. Was projected to be the starter, it sounded like, this spring. And
That's interesting, though. Like a presumed starter for Big Ten school with a new coach who it seems like everyone liked.
Yeah.
Transfers, it was like minutes after Deacon announced. Like
It's 20 minutes.
Maybe it's a coincidence.
I
though.
checked the timestamps because I'm like, that happened right after.
Maybe that's just a coincidence, but you got to think.
I'll be Charlie Kelly in the
Lester, if he already-
mailroom. Yeah.
if he already has
I'll
a
start
relationship
drawing
with him.
stuff. Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah, he's gonna. I would say you got to jump at that just because and this isn't just an indictment on Cade. It's just you can't. I think Marco has a future here. I really do. I think he's shown a lot of progression from that bowl game to that practice we saw. But his instinct is to take off and run. When that's cool if that's nice if that's your last option. But I think you wouldn't want him to be QB1 going to Columbus. If an injury that would be a tough situation for any young quarterback like him.
That's true.
So getting someone with experience would be a plus.
It is a good question, like why Brendan Sullivan would want to transfer when he's like almost assured to be the starter in Northwestern, and he's almost assured to be the backup to start the season here at Iowa. Because Cade's going to be the guy to start the season. So why would you want to go somewhere where you're going to be almost a assured backup spot?
It did sound like maybe there was a younger guy that he was splitting reps with in Evanston, and I wonder if that factors in. I mean, you can come to Iowa and you've got 2 years of eligibility. Okay, you back up Cade 1 year. Maybe you go in if he can't get through the season again, and then you've got an opportunity to compete in 25. And he's got all the experience in the world. He's familiar with the Big Ten. It's not that far from Evanston, still not that far from Davidson. It just makes a lot of sense. And then the timing, and you just can't help but feel like, why not?
If I'm a coach, which I'm not, and there's a reason why, but if you bring in an experienced quarterback, there's no reason to say, hey, you're competing with Cade, and if he's better than Cade, like why the heck not start him on game 1? And who knows? It's good for
Iron sharpens
everyone.
iron.
Exactly.
It's on a sign somewhere in that building, I'm sure.
Before we move on from Deacon, I've seen a lot of chatter on the social medias on why Deacon was taking first team reps if the coaches knew, and who knows if the coaches knew. But I wanted to play a soundbite from Tim Lester I cut. I didn't tell you guys about that from last week, where he kind of
us with soundbites.
He kind of explained why Deacon was taking the 1s and Marco was taking the 2s and 3s.
And this is a really good explanation. I like that.
Yeah. So here's Tim Lester. Let me set it up from last week.
We have to get all 11 players ready to go. So I'm calling plays that we're going to call in the fall. And Deke and Marco, whether they're ready for those plays or not, that's what practice is for. It's early to tell, I think, the plan going in, Deacon has more experience, and so he can go through a progression a little bit more comfortably right now than Marco can. Marco needs more reps. He's a young kid and he's got talent. So Marco's taking all the 2s and the 3s. He's gotten more reps for his own development. I know it's like drinking through a fire hose, but I put him out there on purpose. And I told him, we had to talk about it beforehand, that this is my plan for you. And it's going to be tough at times. There's more people, sometimes go in the wrong direction with his huddle, and he has to deal with the ramifications of a guard going the wrong way and a 3 technique in the backfield all of a sudden, And so it's been really good for him. I said, I know it's going to be hard, but you need the reps, So I think it's been good. They've been playing good. They got a long way to go. This is a totally new system. Mentally, we got to be sharper. Our feet need to be better. I do think we've improved, but we're not even close to where we need to be there. And I'm always going to be hard on them that way. And but we do. We have a long way to go. But I do think they've been working hard at it. And I think the game with this offense is slowing down a little bit for both of them. And it's going to give them a chance to have more success.
Quantity. That's kind of the name of the game, right? You've got a kid who's started 9 games for you in Deacon last year, took a lot of 1 reps when Cade was down, even in the off season. The only way you're going to catch up Marco without throwing him into the fire is just you get 2s and 3s. Go get him. Sorry, Tommy Pawlowski. You're going to have to. I was glad Tommy got some reps out there. I felt bad for Gav Hoffman. Tommy unleashed one wide open, and Gav could have been his first catch in Kinnick early and early, but what do you do? And we'll have more on the tight end room here in a little bit. But yeah, it made sense to me, that rationale. Just get Marco as many reps as he possibly can. Because again, Marco probably for a good chunk of last year, even with Joe out, was probably getting 3s and 4s.
Yeah, and the one thing I think gets lost is when we talk about Marco compared to Deacon, and Deacon has more experience, and that can be true, but it also can be, you think Marco has more of a future here, maybe. And
at some point, there's a divide, yeah.
Yeah, so even if he's not as experienced, I see some people saying like, oh, get him the experience now. Well, if you want to win next year, you need the 11 players who are going to play on offense to know what they're going to be doing. And if Marco's in there, like what's the percentage of him scrambling? It's like close to 50, almost like 40%, where he just takes off, and that's okay if you need to. But for the other players, they need reps catching the ball and going through. I don't want to say like a quarterback who doesn't move. I don't think Cade should even try to run next year, because every time he did, we had like, oh my God, don't. So yeah.
We also have to remember Tim Lester is 15 practices into seeing what he has. I talking to the receivers after that open practice a couple Thursdays ago. The way I framed it, and it seemed to be affirmed, was Tim's figuring out what toys he has in the toy box. You know what I mean? He's got all these, TJ Washington's been moving around. Hayden Large has moved around. He's trying to figure out, what do I have? I've been told, here's the data set of who we have and the opinions of the coaches there. Let me just move stuff around, try a few other things, and see what exactly it is we're going to work with when we're done with that 15th practice and guys have decisions to make, and we got to start getting ready for August. And so it's a plan that makes a lot of sense to me. So you've got your true freshman coming in to be your 3rd scholarship guy, and then whether it's Brendan Sullivan or somebody else, I can't fathom not having another guy coming in to compete with Cade, which is probably how it should be. That's how everybody's going to get better.
Yeah. And Deacon is far from the end of the transfer news for today. I mean, we've got right. I don't know if it was after Deacon, right?
After. So let's recap a little bit. There is a transfer coming in. Stop me if you've heard this one. An offensive lineman from Southeast Polk is transferring to Iowa after an All-American freshman season. Cade Bowrud is coming in from North Dakota. He played at Southeast Polk. He's a former Ram. He'll be a preferred walk-on. He was at practice on Saturday, committed shortly after that. 12 games at center for the, what are they now? The Fighting Hawks. Yeah.
Hawks, yeah.
See, I remember we used to have an editor here at KGN back in my earlier days who would wear the throwback North Dakota old mascot hockey jersey all the time. There you go. Garrett Hyde, hockey guy in the corner there. So you're excited to get him. The guy everyone's talking about today in the transfer news, and then we'll get to the other transfer out, Raylan Sharp. Tweeted that out over the weekend. Raylan Sharp is an all-Missouri Valley receiver for Missouri State last year. 73 catches, I believe, program record, just shy of 1,000 yards. Hawkeye fans, think back 10 years ago to a guy named Damon Powell. This kid's Damon Powell. Damon came out of Snow College, a community college. They're about the same size. Raylan is 5'9", $172. Damon was 5'11", 180. Streaks and screens. They can fly. I went back and watched, I don't know if you remember, 2013 at Minnesota.
Yeah, that
jailbreak screen where Jay Crudock has the entire front 7 for the Gophers coming at him. Just Damon Powell, 3 steps. Yeah, nobody's going to catch him. Damon, kind of this, I imagine the same formula and approach they would take as they did with Damon 10 years ago. 31 catches while he was on campus over 2 years, 608 yards, 5 scores. He averaged 20 yards a catch. He's your go-get-it guy, or get him in space and let him go. He was the quarterback at Allen, Texas High School, where Kyler Murray was also the quarterback. You watch his tape, Kyler and Raylan, they move a lot alike. He's one of those guys that, boy, you hope you keep him on campus. I don't know if Iowa's officially offered him yet. He's been offered by a lot of smaller schools. He has a visit to North Texas, which is right by Allen in Denton, later this week, and then I think he tweeted out he's going to Fresno State on Sunday. I know they've offered him, but another guy to wildly speculate about. Going to be a lot of fun.
You know, when you're looking at this, if they do land this guy, and you know, I don't know much about him, and I know I was reading some tweets from you last night, so it seems like you just gave us the.
I've watched
rundown.
a lot of Raylan Sharp film in the last couple of days.
You got to be intrigued about what Tim Lester's starting to put together. You know, moving T.J. Washington to wide receiver. I know he's still going to play running back, but a shifty guy who can make plays.
Guys in space.
And another guy
Caden
like
Weegen's thriving because of that, because just you can do a little bit of
I
everything.
thought about this last night, but do you remember midway through the season when you probably don't. I should have looked it up, but I was calling for Caden to get more wide receiver snaps.
No, that was the entire podcast last year was you asking for more sweeps and routes for Caden Weegen.
We got the ball, you know, and he was a punt returner once Cooper went down. He was electric, you know, and he was a kick returner all year. And I shouldn't say electric because, you know, that
Hey, a
assumes touchdowns.
15-yard return against Illinois to set up KJ was about as electric as it was going to get at that moment.
He was very good with the ball, and I thought, you know, we underutilized some of those weapons last year, TJ including, because he got about 6 to 10 carries last year, and you could tell he has talent. Same with Kamari Moulton. These shifty guys, these speedy guys, and if you can get players in space, something we didn't really do last year, it could make, you know, I don't see like Iowa being a top 30 offense, but if you just move up a little bit, it can really relieve some pressure on your defense and score some points.
Add 100 yards a game and you move up, 30 spots, something like that? Like, yeah, a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. And that's where, as we're going to talk about like additions and needs that Iowa needs, particular. I mean, wide receivers, that biggest spot, I would say. I mean, it has to be the number one spot where Iowa needs help is at the wide.
I would say quarterback, but after that, wide receiver.
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
Well, there is a departure from the tight end room, as you were alluding to. Cale Vanderbush, who I listed as one of my surprises for spring practice later in this show, we'll talk about that, then surprised everybody and announced he was leaving today. Didn't play any games the last couple years, but maybe had the biggest play of practice on Saturday, a really nice catch from Marco, and that tight end room is packed. We know it. It is every year, and probably just an opportunity to go somewhere else. You got some good reps on film there, certainly in Kinnick on Saturday, and all the best to Cale, certainly.
Yeah, already been taken off the roster, so can't look up any of the stats from last year. But yeah,
he didn't play in any game.
It's a busy room, and there's just so many guys that can do stuff. Hayden Large is listed tight end again this year. I mean, you got Zach Ortworth, you got Lachey. I mean, it's easy to understand that, like, boy, even though I might be a really good tight end, I'm just not going to see a lot of snaps this season because there's 4 or 5 great, maybe NFL caliber tight ends playing in front of me.
The double-edged sword of tight end you. If you go there, you got a chance to be great, but you also could get stuck behind all that greatness. So let's look at Saturday now. We'll take a full look back at the practice and what we saw, what stood out, maybe some surprises, maybe some guys that we didn't know were going to pop the way they did. Let's start, though, with who we did not see out there, because there was a plentiful amount of hoodies on the sideline, not just Cooper DeJean making his final appearance in Kinnick as a fan there on the sideline. Logan Lee and a couple other guys were there. Cade McNamara, still limited, didn't go through any actual live reps, but went through his throwing drills. We saw the same at open practice a couple Thursdays ago. So basically his whole spring is about like what last spring was. Not a lot of Cade McNamara. Logan Jones, Jennings Dunker, they weren't dressed for that open practice. We got 20 minutes at practice. What would that have been? April 11th, 20 minutes on a Thursday morning. They weren't dressed for that. They weren't out there for this. All these injuries we're about to talk about, too. It sounds like everyone will be fine come summer. So for summer conditioning, they'll be good. Seth Anderson missed another spring, just tough. I mean, he was beat up last spring, too.
But sounds like he got hurt during practice, because I think Kirk said he played a little bit. He looked good, and then was out early.
It's a tough situation. 2 guys that were out there that Thursday, we were there, that were then coming in beat up on Saturday, walking into Kinnick. Addison Estrenga, who's tight end 2 this year, had a cast on his right hand, right arm. And Le'Shawn Williams, your all Big Ten running back, coming in with a left boot. He said it was a grade 1 thing, not a big deal, he'll be fine. But so all those guys, all of them starters, essentially, not part of the scrimmage on Saturday. On the defensive side, Jamari Harris, who wasn't out there the Thursday that we could be there. Y.A. Black also wasn't out there, and Kyler Fisher. Basically everybody else was out there. Having set the table as we did, impressions of Iowa's offense and defense and the 2024 Iowa Hawkeyes after 15 spring practice. I need bold predictions. Jump to as many conclusions as you want.
I feel like I've already got my bold prediction for the fall cocked and loaded, but I don't know if we want to hold on to that for the.
I'll do it now. It might change.
Get a permit, sir. Yeah.
I spend a lot of time watching the offense primarily, so that's what I'm mainly going to be able to speak on. But I mean, the biggest thing that stood out to me was the amount of injuries, and it's like, this is like watching just a game full of backups. And Iowa State did almost the same thing that day where they were like, well, we did our scrimmage with the starters last week, so for the spring scrimmage, actually for the public, we're just going to play all backups. And it's like, you don't even know what you're looking at.
Win in the dark.
The biggest thing that I maybe thought was, I was like, I am very impressed again with this running back room, and I think that's going to be an enormous part of the offense this year and could put up some big numbers. My bold prediction, and again, we can replay this tape and just to
KJ coming at you. Whoop.
just to remind me when the fall comes around. I think that it's entirely likely that there are 2 players on the offense that have 1,000 all-purpose yard seasons. A Caleb Johnson and a whoever that might be, Kamari Moulton or Jazz Patterson or somebody else. I think that there's enough talent at that running back spot that they're going to get a lot of carries and a lot of short dump-off passes too.
We had the same standout player.
Really?
Caleb Johnson, yeah. And maybe it shouldn't be any surprise because he's been doing it for a few years here. But I guess when I first got to the practice and people started coming out, I don't know if I should say I forgot that he was his size, but he stood out among all the other playmakers. Just he looks like a man amongst boys sometimes.
Yeah.
He was returning.
He's Iowa's Derrick Henry in a way. He's not Derrick Henry's size, but stacked. Again, Kamari Bolton's bulked up a little bit from last year, and he's got that baby face. Like Kamari walked in, I'm like, oh, who's this young man? Oh, it's Kamari. He's very good at what he does.
Kid captain.
Yeah. Oh man, no, Kamari. Dude, yeah, you guys are right. Kamari's going to be something there.
But Caleb is just, he just looks like he almost looks like an NFL player out there. I mean, he's just got such strength, build, speed, power. He's going to be so good this year.
So last year, too, is even, KJ was the starter week 1, and then in the middle of the season, LaShawn was the number 1 running back, and it kind of went back and forth. And, I mean, I think, another bold comment, I think KJ will be leading rusher, and I don't know how much running backs will share the load. You got to see at least 3. So I do expect the rushing game to be a lot better this year.
I think especially, again, that offensive line, Logan missed some time. So many of those guys were so beat up. Mason Richmond was beat up for a lot of the year.
He said he was healthy for the first time in a while. So
I'm glad because, it's from the sounds of things, he played through quite a bit. And Jennings is beat up. Nick DeYoung, I think, had some injuries here. Again, I forget what game. Was it Rutgers maybe? Nick DeYoung's arm got bent back in a way that I thought he might never play again.
Wow.
And then he was back the next week because he's an offensive lineman built different. But, that running back room, there's so much potential in there. And I think with KJ, how you maybe, quote-unquote, forget about him is he didn't have a carry at Wrigley. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks later, he's winning the West. It's just, and that's kind of how Iowa's running back room has been these last couple of years where it's been ebbs and flows. I don't know if it's a hot hand thing or whatever it may be. But
is that like an indictment on the former play caller, Brian Ferentz?
Not really. You've got a lot of guys, and you just kind of go, I don't know.
I think you put the ball in your playmakers, and he's clearly one of them. I get ups and downs and stuff.
He had the big Purdue game.
Yeah.
Had the big was great as a freshman there in 22. It's just, I don't know. That's football, as philosophers say.
So who is your standout offensive player?
Caleb Brown.
It was Caleb? Oh, Brown. Okay.
The other Caleb.
Yeah. It is so evident that he's the dude. So that's what you call him. Mm-hmm. Or Duderino, if you're not into the whole brevity thing. That's a Big Lebowski reference. I was like, I need some sort of reaction.
That was a clean route if you're watching on YouTube.
I got super lucky there. I ISO'd on him, and he had that big gainer. He moves so well. Just stop on a dime, get going.
That cut right there.
That cut.
Oh, my gosh.
This is what everybody was salivating about when he committed last year with 1 catch for 5 yards against Iowa a year before. It was like, but he went to Ohio State. Look, maybe he could do this. And we are seeing more and more, certainly saw it in the last few games of last year, as he gets more familiar, more comfortable at the position, and now in this playbook. things are going to feed through him, and that's super, super exciting. I also put Caden in there because I think it just, whether it's being with Seth out or just Caden's skill set, talking to him after that open practice on the previous Thursday, there was a very genuine enthusiasm from him of just like, this offense fits what I do really well, which is, sweeps and short stuff and a streak here and there. I think they took one deep shot to Caden and, Deacon just overthrew him. But he's a guy, as Mike talked a lot last year, he's shifty, he can move, great hands there in the end zone on the touchdown. So he stood out to me just because there was so much that went through him, especially here, just a nice little pitch to him. Didn't go for a lot of yards, but at least shows they want to find ways to get him going however they can. And, of course, back during the punt returns. When I talked to him that Thursday, he was far more focused on the receiver stuff. I think he's like, yeah, once we get to the summer and the fall, we'll worry about punt returns. He's like, I need to get this offense down pat. But those are my two standouts just because Caleb Brown's going to be the straw that stirs the passing game drink, I think, regardless of whoever might end up at quarterback, whether it's Cade or a transfer or whatever. And then Caden just kind of does it all.
Mm-hmm. No, we already gave our offensive players, but it's hard. I think, and Mitch and I were talking about this last night, it's kind of hard to pick a defensive player when half of the starters were out. The linebackers really didn't play that much because the starting linebackers didn't play that much. At least give the live reps. It was Harrell and is it Carson Scherer?
Yeah.
He got a lot of reps.
That was a great pick he had, too. I know people knocked it like, oh, Deacon throws another pick. Dude, put him in the tight end room.
Yeah.
Abdul Had showed we can go linebacker to tight end, coaching them.
You've got the tight ends, all right? I don't think we need to add another one to the room.
As good a catch as you're going to see from a linebacker. It's just so tough to judge, too, because, again, they're learning a new offense. Half the starting offense is out. Oh, by the way, it's Iowa's defense. They've played the same way stellarly, not a word, for the last 25 years under Phil Parker, and all this experience is back. It's just so tough to pick a standout because they all came back, and the reason everybody's excited is because they're all standouts almost all the time. Like the Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson have incredible plays. No, but they're Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins. They were great out there because that's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I did a cop-out and chose the cornerback room because I think one of the questions I had going into the spring was, or I bet a lot of people had this, but where's the depth at corner? You're losing Cooper. You had two pretty good corners last year, Deshaun Lee and Jamari Harris. Harris was out all spring. Lee wasn't taking the first team reps. I don't know if you noticed that, if that's anything, but I did really like the play from Nestor and TJ Hall and even Hilson, right?
This was a great play by Hall. Or no, never mind. I thought
this is the PBU right here. I believe.
This is one where, Alex Eichmann has that in his hand, and there's another one, too, where Eichmann has it in his hand, and I think it's Deshaun Lee actually does it, not TJ. Right there.
There it is,
Keep fighting. And it was Jarrett Bowie, so I have no idea what I'm talking about. I shot this footage. But, it was an impressive day for the DBs, for sure. Yeah.
And Nestor coming up and playing some rush defense, too. Like, he gets this goal line tackle on Kamari Moulton.
Put him down.
Yeah, and he, on that Caden Weegan end around, I think that would have went a little further if Nestor didn't blow it up. I think it's the next play on the video we're showing on YouTube. But I think you have a reason to think if one of the corners goes down, which it's a position that has injuries a lot, you shouldn't be panicking. Now, can they do it on the big stage? That will be the next test. But I was impressed with what I saw from these second and third stringers.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I told Mike this in the email, just kind of the peek behind the curtain for what the spring game days look like for us. I mean, it's a day where we're like, boy, we're not going to get a chance to shoot any video of these guys for another 4 months. I've got to collect all the B-roll, the video that I can, and so I was just focusing on all the offensive guys to see it as if I could get as many as I could. So I didn't get too many looks at what was even happening on defense because I was focused on just collecting as much offensive video as I could. So I put for a guy that stood out, and I don't even know, I didn't really get a chance to look at him, but I just said Nick Jackson because I'm excited for what he's going to bring to the table this year. I think that, again, we knew, and it was maybe evident in his first couple games that he was still kind of picking up the pieces and kind of figuring out how to get going in Iowa's defense. And then as the season progressed, he got better and better. And so I think that with a year under his belt, he's going to stand out right away in Phil Parker's defense.
He had to play so much pass defense his first two games against Utah State. I asked him, I think it was ahead of that Western Michigan game. I go, are you tired of pass defense? And he just gave me this look like, dude. He had to learn a lot of different offenses at Virginia, or defenses at Virginia. Gets to settle into one with Phil Parker here, though. So good to see. So we've talked about our standouts. Surprises for anybody? Maybe not necessarily like, didn't think this dude could do anything, but maybe somebody who you've been watching, maybe elevated the game a little bit on Saturday.
Yeah, for me, in this, again, what really is a surprise unless it was like, someone super buried on the depth chart was taking first team reps. But I put down for offense Kamari Moulton, and you did too. So I noticed when you sent me the email, I was like, oh man, those are both my choices. But he got a lot of reps on Saturday, and he really made the most of it. I thought he was explosive. He scored a long touchdown. Now, when you're in the spring practice, the DBs or the defense, there's different scenarios in the practice where they're not even hitting them, and then they're not even tackling them. So, he probably would have got tackled there, but he ran in the end zone, so we call it a touchdown. But
I still remember those carries he had against Western Michigan. I mean, that was his real woe game. He got hit a couple times, and we talk about he's not a big dude, but guy can break tackles. Guy can take contact. You don't want too much contact with him. But again, guys like Jay Higgins picked him up literally for some tackles. But he had a fun Saturday, that's for sure.
Again, as much as I say I watched the offense, was Jazz Patterson dressed on Saturday?
So that was another point I was going to make. It appears from the practice that Kamari is ahead of Jazz, and I don't know if that's true.
I did not see hardly any Jazz out there.
He was working with the second and third stringers.
Okay.
Jazz had the fumble near the goal line early in the, I don't even know if that was scrimmage technically. I think that was more red zone work.
That's right.
And then Will Hubert, walk-on D lineman from Omaha, popped him on one. That was the nap pop for the inside baseball folks there of the day. That was the sound. Again, Jazz will rip off a 50-yard run at some point and remind you what he can do. So.
Yeah. And so that's why I put Kamari as my surprise too, just because obviously we saw what Caleb has and LaShawn was out, but it seems like Kamari Moulton was getting a lot of carries out there, and so he's a guy that we might see a lot more of this fall. We saw him. It was the Western Michigan game that he had a couple touchdown runs last year, and so we saw a little bit of a peak of Kamari Moulton, but he's a guy that we might see a lot more of this season.
So that's my standout or my surprise there. Devin Hilson, a kid who has got a lot of reps on special teams the last couple of years out of Des Moines North. I think he was the first D1 recruit from Des Moines North in 40 years or something like that. Came in as a running back, moved to DB.
Go Polar Bears.
Go Polar Bears, man. I tell you, he had not just that recovered fumble on the goal line, 2 real-time minutes later, he blocked a field goal. I think his most noticeable play last year was he had that running into the kick-catch interference against Wisconsin in Madison.
Yeah.
He's too good of an athlete to not have a breakout campaign in some way, shape, or form, even in a packed DB room, whether it's on special teams or however he finds his way onto the field. As a guy who's kind of been following him since he committed out of North, that's kind of the sequence I've been waiting to see out of him. I'm excited for what he can do, whether it's as a special teams ace or he gets into that rotation in the DB room. He feels like a dude who he was making plays on Saturday.
You said he was the one that blocked the field goal, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
he got off the edge a couple times real well on there.
Mitch and I were standing next to each other, and it was like the 4th field goal in a row, and I was like, I'm not recording this. and
while he was telling me he wasn't going to record it, that's why I wasn't recording it. It was a domino effect.
Yeah.
I again, didn't get a chance to see a lot of him, but my breakout or surprise player that I just put just because I know that some of the coaches have been talking about him, and he's a little bit of a name that's circling around out there, is Zach Lutmer.
Yeah.
I think both Parker and Woods, I think, dropped his name at the coordinator press conference last week. He's a kid that has a pedigree that's familiar. He's coming from Northwest Iowa. He was a kid who played quarterback at an all-state level and won a state championship as a high schooler, and now he's coming in and moving to D-back. I mean, almost the exact same.
I've never heard that story.
Same story that we saw to Cooper DeJean, who's going to be finding a new home on Thursday night. But Zach Lutmer's a guy that's going to come in. He's a heck of an athlete and could make some contributions there in the D-back room. Or maybe, I'm curious to see if they even try to put him at a return position as well, just because he's got that kind of electrifying speed that could do some damage as a punt return guy.
He was back on a couple returns too, wasn't he? It was Caden and Alec Wick, and I think Zach might have been back there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two, Nestor and Lutmer, they were floated. The coaches were saying, like, I think it was more Lutmer that they said could play cash, safety, corner, and Nestor was more corner. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct? Like, that's where they see them.
Yeah.
But exciting times. I mean, when you're losing a player like Cooper, if you get, some guys who can go in there and maybe in a few years' time be the same, make not the same impact, but make an impact like that, it's good for the Iowa defense.
Nestor's a good pick, though, too, just because he's a guy that even last year we saw him. It seems like he was a guy that if Cooper DeJean wasn't downing a Torrey Taylor punt, it seems like John Nestor got down there and downed a handful of punts, too. So he's a guy that we could see make an impact in a lot of aspects of the game.
And how many times have we seen somebody make their mark on special teams and go on to be a big-time player on the other side of the ball?
I also marked down TJ Hall because I just thought he made some plays. We saw the pass breakup and a lot of reps with the with the first team. So
he had a real nice play last fall too in the fall during the scrimmage, and I think the memory that still the way we were introduced, so to speak, to TJ Hall was that Nebraska game in 22 where Cooper goes down, he gets thrown in, and they immediately pick on him, and I think he ended up getting pulled for I'm blanking on 16's name, shame on me, but every time we've seen him since, he's been doing something positive, and that's all you can do after you get hit in the mouth like that is just move forward.
Yep.
So we mentioned Cooper. Let's get a little quick to wrap things up. Maybe a little draft preview, draft predictions. What do we think about what Cooper DeJean is going to do on Thursday? Well, he's going to be an Old Bowl. That's what he's going to do. He's going to hang out with family and friends. Where do we think he's going to go? The drafts have kind of been all over. I've seen as high as going to the Rams, which I believe pick in the high teens, back into the first round. Where do we hope? Some of us are Packers fans picking at 25.
I wouldn't mind that. I do think Packers needed. Well, I love edge rushing in the NFL, so you can never have enough of that. I've heard as high as, and this is anything from Scott Docterman on their latest podcast, the Colts at 15, but as late as like, they're saying, there's like a small percent. I defer to those guys because I don't look at the draft stuff until draft night. I'm excited for it. But they said there's a small chance if like teams come up and trade up and the players who are the teams who need corners drop back, there's a 5% chance he could drop out of the first round. But I don't know if that happens. I think he still gets picked by one of those teams in the back end, like the Eagles or my Packers could do it, or the Rams, like you said. Any of those teams could.
I will say that it's going to be a busy night for the DeJeans. I texted Jason, Cooper's dad, to be like, can your boy come and check out some interviews once he's done? And he tells me that they have NFL Films, University of Iowa camera crew, and a couple other places because he's contracted with them that are going to be out there in Odebolt.
It's a packed house.
So no room for the local media to come out and do the interviews.
Staying home and getting probably more attention than you would if you were in the Motor City, which is where, even as a Vikings fan, I would love to see Cooper DeJean in Honolulu Blue. He mentions Jack Campbell so often as the guy he looks up to. Jack was back in the building along with a litany of other guys a couple weeks ago. Hawkeyes in Detroit, they love him up there. I've heard more and more. I think at 29 to Detroit would be super awesome. Wherever he goes, though, anybody who's followed Iowa knows he's going to be a heck of a watch.
I know that there was maybe immediately coming out of college, it was like for sure first rounder. Maybe dropped a little bit just because he wasn't able to do some of the workouts right away because he was recovering from injuries. But at this point, I have such a hard time seeing him falling out of the first round. Seems like just like an absolute 100% sure thing that he's going to be a first rounder. One, just for the completionist aspect of my brain, I would love to see is number 17 is the Jaguars. The Jaguars, I think, are the only team that has never drafted an Iowa Hawkeye.
That sounds. I believe you've brought up this trivia before.
that comes up every year that they say 31 teams. I'm like, wait, who the hell's the last one? And so I think it's the Jags are the team that hasn't. And so they're sitting there at 17. That'd be a little bit higher than what we've seen Cooper with some of the draft projections, but certainly a possibility. I would just personally love to see him a little bit closer to home. So Minnesota would be a fun fit for him. I mean, a lot of people like that 19-20 spot to the Rams or the Steelers as well. So there's just a lot of good spots fit from that 17 to 30 range that would be a good fit for Cooper.
It would be cool, though, to see him drop and go to Detroit at 29 unless they move up and get him.
Yeah, that's the double-edged sort of rooting for it. Like, oh, man, that'd be so cool. Oh, 29 does not make the money that 24 does. But
Yeah.
But did you know this would be the first round pick for Phil Parker, defensive back?
isn't that wild to think about?
Wow, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's what Lysico
Desmond
said
went
on his
fifth?
podcast.
5th round?
Fifth round. I think
I still remember
Micah went third, right?
Micah was 3rd.
Bob Sanders was second.
Riley was 4th? Where'd Riley go?
Riley was 4th or 5th, yeah. And Bob Sanders was the highest, I think, at second.
I still remember Desmond dropping and just like, what did you guys watch the
I think
last
we
2
thought he was going to be a 2nd or 3rd rounder, right? At the time.
He was a Thorpe Award winner. He was, Well, hey, guess
He's
what?
still sticking around. And
And he was an all-pro immediately, I think, as a special teams guy, too. And there's a reason Des King is still in the league. Fun little Hawkeye fact. What projected high-round draft pick, son of a former first-round pick, dad went to Iowa. Do we know this?
Joe Alt.
Joe Alt, there you go.
Yeah.
John was the 21st overall pick in '84.
I've never seen anybody else with the last name Alt other than
You put 2 and 2 together as soon as
the
you
dad was John.
John.
And the son is
Son's
Joe,
Joe.
at Notre Dame, yeah. So as soon as I saw that there was an alt at Notre Dame who was getting All-America nods, I was like, has to be related. There's no way this is not a relation to John Alt. So, yeah.
Over under 3rd and a half round for Torrey Taylor.
that's a tough one.
Third
and a half round?
I didn't know how to do an
that's a good
over under
point.
on rounds.
So mid-third round, are you saying?
Does he go? Where does he go?
Day 2
Let's
or
just do that. I'm not
day
gonna
2
try
or
to do-
3? Is that what you're kind of
Let's
asking?
do it that. Yeah.
Okay.
Use take 2. We're not doing this live. Just use what Owen said.
I hope it's day 2. I almost said day 1. That's not going to happen. But
It could happen.
Gosh. I think that's...
I wouldn't mind again.
We didn't even talk about Reese Dakin today.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Dude crossed a guy over on a punt. And we didn't talk about it.
We did have it on the rundown, special teams talk, but
well.
we can still... There's time.
All right. Well, let's answer the Torrey question quick.
I would...
I'm gonna go 4th round.
Okay. I would be inclined to say a day 3 guy, early fourth rounder. I think that's the area you're looking at is very end of the 3rd, very early in the 4th, but somewhere in that range. But I think I'd lean towards the 4th round.
Yeah, I'd love to see him be the button on day 2. That'd be nice to see it late 3rd, but early 4th. Either one of those spots would be great. Reese,
It's impressive.
you look good.
Yeah.
Not an expert, but I'm trying. With as much punting as we've watched the last couple of years, it seems like the kid's hang time just lasts an eternity. That ball just like hangs up there above the Kinnick Stadium press box and then just drops. I mean, he's certainly got accuracy issues to work on. That was what Torrey Taylor was so good at, was putting it in the right spot, kind of down the coffin corner thing.
He had one like that, though, didn't he?
He did have one like that.
And
He also-
I think this is one of the biggest cheers of the day.
Yeah.
Crowds were like, yes.
He also shanked one out on the left sideline. But so it's like he's still so raw and fresh and young that it's like, I mean, Hawkeye fans don't expect last year's Torrey Taylor out of Reese Dakin from day one. I mean, he's still got a lot of things to work on, and he's still adjusting to the American football game. But he's I think got the power and the leg strength to be something pretty special.
Yeah, he had some great punts. I think consistency will be his biggest issue, and him being a young guy and not playing like American football outside of, I don't know what he did beforehand, but if anything, I know he was in that program for Aussie.
He's a rugby guy.
Yeah.
Or Aussie Rules football.
Aussie Rules football.
Yeah, there's some program that transitions those players to American football.
Yeah.
But I saw some highlights of him.
So
that practice type.
Never
thing.
played American football other than those camps and trainings and stuff. But
It will be interesting to see how that translates. His punts when he's just going out pregame compared to when he's having to worry about a block. And he like juked him like he was on Aussie Rules football. It was hilarious.
what's fun too is that I didn't realize this about him until he was talking to the media the other week, that his mom is American. She's from Arizona, and so he's got an American passport as well.
Oh, wow.
So
his mom's from Arizona, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so he can get NIL deals. That was the big thing with Torrey, was
Yeah.
that he wasn't able to get NIL stuff, but since he's got an American passport or partial American citizenship, he can bank on some of that NIL stuff.
It was cool to see Torrey, No Foot Too Small, I believe, was his charity that he raised a heck of a lot of money for.
All those punting is winning shirts, all that money went to that organization.
And again, we
shirts out there.
We talk about the offensive struggles. You don't get punting as winning and that mantra and that movement if you have a good offense. So just try to find the good in everything you can. Another thing about Reese, maybe getting used to American football still, the Midwest dry humor is chef's kiss. As he was walking in, looked over to the fans and goes, "A little chilly, isn't it?" Like, yep. Thank you, Reese. You're doing great.
Yeah.
You're doing great, bud.
He's our colleague Mark Woodley pointed out beforehand. He was like, "Boy, there's not a lot of programs out there that all the media is focusing their cameras on the true freshman punter that's coming in. That's not happening at Alabama, I don't think, this season. That's kind of a uniquely Iowa thing at this point."
The other special teams talk, when it comes to returner, it seems like we have options, which is good. I think the punt returner for sure is going to be Weegan. And, Caleb Johnson was taking punts took the most punts second in the second team. So those are the two that look to be the punt returner, kick returner. It looks like it's going to be more of a running back style. I don't know if Caden's going to be back there or not, but I actually don't remember them doing place kicks, so I don't think we got to see that.
They didn't do any kickoffs, no.
Yeah.
Drew Stevens, though, nailed one from, 56 or something like that?
Boy,
Had the one blocked, but, hey, Drew...
he's going from the logo. Caitlin's not the only logo
There
shooter.
you go. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the incredible odyssey of Marshall Meter, who just shows up, doesn't play, and then kicks one to beat Nebraska, and then he's done. That's like an all-time...
Mic drop.
That's a folk hero story. This guy comes in 3 weeks before, was done with football. LeVar calls him in, sits. Hey, can you go beat the Cornhuskers for us? Yeah, sure, whatever you need. Boom. Okay, I'm done. Bye.
Yeah.
And the backup,
It's like an all-time story.
I just want to get this in too for all the fans out there. The backup kicker this year, his name is Trip Woody, which is a 10 out of 10 name. Last thing I think we should talk about,
That's
though.
all you wanted to say.
Yeah, I just want to say his name. He looked a little shaky, but he made some kicks. He's got a lot of work to do. I think he's young though, so.
He's a kid, yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, with the news that Ed Podolak is retiring, or not retiring, sorry, he's moving out of the radio booth from color commentator. He's going to do pregame stuff. Who would be the best replacement? We talked about it a little bit before, but who do you guys think would be the best replacement? I know you probably, Owen, haven't listened to the radio much.
It's true.
During games.
Boy, just a name that jumps out right away because he's at all of the games is Dallas Clark.
We said that last night, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's been the consensus from everybody I've talked to. Is he's at every game anyways.
Literally.
And he's a personality.
Always there. Yeah.
After the games, after all the press conferences, I don't think we've said it on the pod, but him and his kids are most of the home games are just sitting there on the field throwing the ball. So it's cool to see him out at Hawkeye games. And he was on Pat McAfee when they came here and I thought he was excellent from what I watched, just being a personality on the show. So that is a plus.
Yeah, he's just a funny guy. Different style than Ed Podolak would be. And I don't know what kind of chemistry it would be.
That's who we need. That's who we need. Mitch King, for those not watching on YouTube, we just brought up a great tweet, kind of cut from the same cloth. Matt Randazzo from the Quad Cities brought up there needs to be an unedited or uncensored version featuring Pat Anger, like a separate broadcast. Pat would be unbelievable.
Have I told you my Pat Anger story?
No, please go ahead.
This was my freshman year when I was living in the dorms. I don't know if we were in the same grade, but we were walking over Hillcrest to get food. That's where all the athletes lived. And Pat Anger jumped on a car that was driving, not fast but slow, and then just pounded on the hood, and then jumped off and then walked away. And I was like,
That's
must have
just
been
how
his
they
friend.
say hello
Yeah.
in Bettendorf. Yeah, that's
like,
you can tell me any Pat Anger story, I'd believe it. What a dude, one of the best.
Yeah, and I don't know. Just like the on-air chemistry, would Dallas and Dolph, boy, that's a good combo.
Alliteration sold.
Dolph and Dallas.
I think it'd be fun. I think Gary would have a blast with it, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. And when the names I've seen thrown around, I would like it to be a Kirk Ferentz guy. There's some older players that, quite frankly, I think probably wouldn't want to do local radio. When it comes to like the Chuck Longs and Anthony Herron. He doesn't even work for the Big Ten Network now. I don't know what that looks like transitioning, but that'd be the perfect one, I think, is Dallas.
It'd be fun if they figured out a rotation of a couple guys, maybe.
Another guy that we've talked about that's around a lot is Lana Linichak.
Yeah.
That it's like
He was there Saturday.
Yeah, he knows the program obviously super well, and again, another kind of folk hero among Hawkeye fans. Well, he probably he might have been under Kirk Ferentz when he was an assistant coach back in the 80s. I'm not totally sure about that timeline, but he's a guy that knows the program well enough to step in there. And I don't know, I hadn't really given it much thought about who would be the replacement, but Those are some fun names.
Does it have to be a former player? I would think that so, just given the.
You just have to check the transfer portal, see who's out there for color commentators.
So that's what
Anybody's
Sullivan's
jumped in-
after.
Anybody who's jumped in from the Pac-12, any play-by-play out there, color commentator. It'll be
Merton
fun.
Hanks.
Yeah, hey, bring them on. We'll take them all. This is fun to catch up a little bit on football, talk everything. Obviously, things changed a little bit in the last few hours with Deacon and Kale's decisions. Again, all the best to them. And I don't know, the next time we'll get to sit down and and talk football again. Summer conditions still a couple months away. I don't know, Mike.
We'll have to make a discussion if they get a big quarterback, not a big quarterback, but a quarterback in the portal if we want to do a quick one.
Quick one.
Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll find our spots. Go ahead.
I would just say Kids Days in August, so that might be the next time you hear from
There's
us.
the clock, yeah. We'll find some spots. Real quickly, so this podcast has been around since what, August? Since last spring ball, or summer ball, fall ball?
Early August, maybe late July.
Whatever season we want to go. So this thing started from literally ground up, wanting to do something a little expanded with sports coverage. And over the weekend, the Iowa Broadcast News Association decreed that we are the second best large market TV podcast that sent in a nomination in the state of Iowa.
There's two of us out there?
Shout out to PBS for taking home the gold. I don't
Zoom it in, put it up.
I don't know how many TV stations do podcasts. I'm sure more and more as we.
I was told Iowa PBS had one that won.
Yeah, they got first. We got second.
Kind of cheating, if you ask me.
Also, it's a letter I, not I. It's fine. I won't complain about it. But I think that's just a testament to, at least they didn't have to give us anything. And it's just a testament to, I think, what Mike, I'll always give you a ton of praise for setting the table literally and figuratively when it comes to the studio and your crazy computer setup and putting together rundowns and cutting videos and everything like that. You're cutting videos like crazy too, and sound bites and all that. And as we put together these rundowns, but also we've gone from 0 fans on a brand new Twitter account to more than 500. So to everybody who keeps engaging with this and watching it and making it something that we feel energized to do and motivated to do, thanks to all of you for getting us this cool piece of paper that I'll probably no, we're not gonna. Listen, we've all been Matt McDonough and I got first, and we've wanted to throw the silver medal in the trash, or the silver plaque in the trash. Well, hang on to this. This is a cool little step. So thank you to everybody for being a part of the ride. Here's the first of hopefully many. I don't know. Emmys are in October, right? Well,
yeah, we'll have to.
There's got to be
get something going. But thanks to the engineering staff too for putting this card together.
Yeah.
Brent Sankin's been huge. He's been helping me out. So
it takes a village. So yeah. So there's our award. There's our DAP, and we'll just keep an eye on the portal like everybody else. We'll see what we can figure out here for next podcast and keep breaking everything down. So Mike, Owen, Mitch, appreciate all you guys. We'll see you next time, whenever that is, on the Eye on the Hawks.